Hey YouTube, welcome back. I want to talk about one of my favorite movies, and I should start this off by saying the director I'm going to be talking about, Stuart Gordon, recently passed away this previous March. It's his passing is such a huge loss. He was a tremendous director who spent a lot of his time not just behind the camera for film and cinema, but as a theater director. He started one of the most prolific and avant-garde, strangest theater troupes in Chicago. I mean, that's where we got Jeffrey Combs and so many other wonderful actors that really started getting into film in the early to mid 80s. Most people do know this director's first film, his debut film, even if they don't know his name. And that's because it's one of the seminal horror films of all time, and that's Reanimator. Reanimator is incredible. It's rightfully talked about as one of the best horror films. It balances gore and just really icky visuals with humor in a way that is it's gross and funny, and it still has the ability to shock 35 years later. It's a great, tremendous film, and I hope that everybody, if you've never seen or heard of Reanimator, please go check it out. You're in for the time of your life. Oh my God. But the film from him that actually I love more than Reanimator is a film that a lot of people don't actually take the time to watch. It's not a forgotten film from him, but when people speak about Stuart Gordon, it's usually about his H.P. Lovecraft creations, Reanimator, From Beyond, Doggin, Castle Freak even. Or if you get people that are super into niche films, they'll bring up Robot Jocks or Space Truckers. He had such a wide and varied film career. But Dolls is his 1987 film that he filmed back to back with From Beyond in the same castle in Rome for Charles Band under the Empire International banner. But this film was actually released a year after From Beyond because the special effects in Dolls took forever. Now, this is 1986, 1987, way before computer CG was looking good and widely used for special effects. So what they did here was they used stop motion animation for a lot of the doll effects, which if anyone knows anything about stop motion animation, it's where you set up the camera to take one picture. You have your doll or whatever, click, move it just a little bit, click, just a little bit more, click, until you get 24 frames per second. However you're doing it, if you're doing it on the 2s or the 4s. However, Dolls is a special movie for me. It's a fairy tale, and it's a fairy tale for adults. And I say that, but there's a lot of movies that are termed as adult fairy tales, and they're always about the sex and the violence, and oh, it's kind of like a fairy tale, but it's super adult, meaning it's just a lot of fucking and a lot of blood and gore or something like that. That's not what necessarily makes something adult. To be, frank, there is violence and gore in this film, but it has this magic quality to it, and that's what I mean by fairy tale. This film is shrouded in childlike wonder. The lead character is this young girl named Judy, who is on a European trip with her dad and her new stepmom. Her new stepmom is the worst. She is played by Stuart Gordon's wife, Caroline Purdy, I believe is her name. And she just revels in it. She's chewing up the scenery. She's just having so much fun being the super evil, wicked stepmother.
Baby, you almost hit them.
You want me to go back and try a second time? Judith.
Rosemary.
That's Mama Rosemary.
You're not my mother.
Thank God.
And that alone has this fairy tale quality to it. And one night while they're driving in the middle of God knows where, their car gets stuck and they end up having to abandon their car in the middle of this big rainstorm, and they come across this huge castle. And the castle is just fairy tale like and beautiful and statuesque. And there's all these really imaginative sequences where Judy's literal imagination is shown on screen. One of the best moments is at this very early stage when the family is walking right before the rain starts pouring, and Judy stops and she's got this teddy bear and she's just kind of looking around, and then bitch of a mother, she comes up.
Leave that thing here.
Teddy and I go everywhere together. We're best friends.
Not this time, Tootsie. You'll travel faster solo.
And it seamlessly blends into this sequence where coming out of the forest is this huge teddy bear.
Teddy will get you for that.
Incredible sequence. I love it. And when they get to the castle, everything is fine, and you meet this old couple who lives there, and they are immediately sinister and incredibly sweet at the same time. The parents are just kind of like, oh, these people are off, and the daughter is just entranced with them. But we as the viewer, we're like, something's not quite right here.
How do you stand the weather?
Oh, we're used to these storms. They're almost magical. They seem to go on and on.
It's like one long night.
Exactly, my dear. The longest night in the world.
How quaint.
The weather brings out creativity. It helps me in my work.
What kind of work is that? Witchcraft?
Close to it.
I am a doll maker.
While they're at dinner, this guy named Ralph and these two hitchhikers that he picked up, they barge into the kitchen completely unannounced. And where it goes from there is just, it's this story about being a child. And that's where, you can have the violence and a little bit of gore, but it's not too crazy in this film. But it's all about being a child and that sense of childlike wonder. You have Judy, the literal child, and you have Ralph, who is this big kid. He's just a big kid. He's, in his mid to late 20s, early 30s, something like that. And he is constantly trying to put a facade on that he is an adult, that he understands the adult world, because he does. He is an adult, but he wants to hold on to and capture that childlike wonder. Everybody else that is not the old couple, they're just vicious, evil, horrible people. But one could say that they're not really horrible. They're just grown-ups, you know. They don't want to deal with children. They think children are telling stories. They're games. We got a couple of kids that are out robbing the country because that's what makes them grown, independent people, even though they're obviously still teens. Their outlandish punk outfits, which are really bitchin'. But it's all part of this facade where they're trying to be more adult and grown up than they actually are.
Don't worry.
I'll get to that fella. And his car keys.
And then you have the stepmom who, awful human being. And they end up becoming the ultimate victims to the dolls, because that's just what happens. The bad, evil people get their comeuppance. They get their punishment. And along with us through this journey is Ralph and Judy, who is like this fantastic dynamic duo.
You still like toys, do you?
Oh, yes, but it's too bad we have to outgrow them, right?
No one says you have to.
My daddy says you do.
Daddies can be wrong sometimes, darling. They're only human.
Every time I watch this movie, I've watched this like maybe 6 times,
Do you know
and I only first saw it in 2013, whenever Scream Factory put out that collector's edition Blu-ray, which sadly is now out of print. So if you can get that Blu-ray, it's super worth it, but try and catch it streaming. It's probably for rent on Vudu or Amazon. After Scream Factory put it out, it became not this relatively obscure 80s horror movie. It's out there now. I first watched it and it just captured my imagination, and that's why I love Stuart Gordon's films. He has a directorial style that works beautifully with low budget technology, fast shooting, minimal amount of takes. But he's so good at his job that it doesn't seem like a trashy low budget movie that you would expect from a Charles Band production. He's the one director that if you were to say, hey, this was Full Moon Features or Empire International, Charles Band Productions, you'd be like, oh, I don't want to watch that garbage. He's the one director that you can't go wrong with. Even his dopier films that he made, like Robot Jocks or Space Truckers, they're still pretty good. They're still very entertaining and fun to watch. And Dolls really captures all of that for me. It's got great special effects, tremendous sequences, some use of slow-mo that just, it's so fun to watch. And did I mention this movie is only like 70 minutes long? It's an hour and 10 minutes long. It's the perfect movie for when you just want to watch something, but you don't have too much time and you don't want to put too much investment into it. You just pop this on and you're transported to this castle in the middle of nowhere with creepy old people and wonderful Ralph and wonderful Judy. It's just a beautiful, beautiful movie to me. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. I want more people to experience Dolls, to experience the joy that I feel from it. And that's why I love movies. And Dolls is one of those movies I love.
Judy,
Yes, Ralph?
these dolls, they're alive, aren't they? Fuck you, Clody!
Well, that's it for film appreciation. We're just going to try to keep these pretty short. Be sure to subscribe. Ding that bell if you haven't, so that you're notified of any new videos that are coming out. I really apologize for the gap in between these videos. It's been a pretty difficult couple of months for me with the coronavirus quarantine and the George Floyd killings. Just been having a really hard time trying to keep my head on straight. So I really appreciate everyone's patience, and I hope that these videos, I hope that you like these videos, and I hope that I can turn these out a little bit faster. I'm still experimenting with how I want to create them. This one is really on the seat of my pants. I just wanted to just get something out there. So I just really hope that this breaks the ice on that, and I can just keep these going and keep turning these out, because these are some of the things that I really want to talk about and share with people. I love these quirky movies that aren't universally renowned, especially from directors like Stuart Gordon. Rest in peace. Love the man. I actually met him once at a screening at the Alamo Drafthouse. It was a surprise that he was there. They screened Dagon and Reanimator. Him and his wife were there. When I met him, the first words, him and his wife autographed a Reanimator poster for me. The Drafthouse commissioned a local Denver artist to create these new, unique posters specifically for that event. And I got them to autograph that, but when I came up to the table and I introduced myself, I immediately just started talking about dolls. His face lit up. He was like this is big teddy bear himself, and he just lit up. And his wife was next to him signing autographs and talking to fans that were there, and he just shook her and was just, here she is, she's right here, because his wife's role, she's the worst person in the movie, but it's one of the most memorable roles. It's, for fans of the movie, her performance is treasured, and I'll always remember that. I didn't talk about any of his other movies. I just told him, how much I loved him as an artist and how much I love dolls. I told him, I was like, if I knew that at this event you were going to be here, I would have brought my Dolls Blu-ray. I forget the Reanimator poster that we had specially made for the event. I just lamented that I wasn't carrying my Dolls Blu-ray with me everywhere I went. And I want to share that love of film, for no matter how quirky they are, with everybody. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned till next time. Until then.